Hello, friends, and welcome into another
Good. Well said.
But for the old Jim Nance there, welcome into the Dead
I did
Arm
not
Sports
know you were going to be
Podcast.
kicking off
Hot
the episode
start.
with that.
Yes.
Is he really? Does he really consider us all friends? I mean, come on.
I mean, he seems like a good guy, and he would, but figured it was fitting. We're going to talk a little NCAA basketball.
Did you want to finish
recap.
your opener there? You got through about 2 words before we both started laughing. Did you have a whole thing?
No, we're good.
Okay.
We'll move on. Figured it was fitting opening up with him doing his last broadcast of the March Madness championship game tournament. And of course, we have our Masters preview at the end of the show, along with the return of our major draft. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But I want to kick it off with that question of the day-to-day gel and just your initial takeaways from that national championship game against San Diego State versus UConn. UConn, pretty heavy favorite in that one. Got close towards the end. I know you were sweating it out a little bit, put a friendly wager down during the game of Monopoly money and sweating it out a little bit. But UConn just kind of, yes. But UConn just, they're too much. They were by far the best team in the tournament from start to finish. I mean, they were just absolutely dominant in just about every game of this tournament. And yeah, they showed in the championship.
I mean, I think we all kind of knew the outcome of how this game was going to go. UConn had, through all 6 of their games throughout this tourney, they'd averaged a winning margin of almost 20 points. So it's like they were clearly so damn dominant. On top of that, San Diego State came off that extremely emotional high with that comeback win against FAU just a couple nights before that. So, having to have that massive comeback, I believe they were down 10 pretty late in the second half. And then obviously the walk-off mid-range, just absolute money shot. That thing hit the bottom of the net. That was clutch. But no surprises here. This was the best team all tournament long. There never really was a best regular season team. It's like, it seemed like that top part of the rankings were constantly changing. UConn got up as high as 2 at one point and then went on a little bit of a skid, but they obviously got hot at the right time and are very deserving champions. What's crazy about UConn? Let me read off these stats just over the last 25 years. Some of these NCAA tournament stats for UConn: 5 national championships, 5 conference titles. Remember, they also switched conferences at one point. They were in the AAC, American, I believe, Athletic Conference, out of the Big East. Now they're back in the Big East. They've missed the tournament 8 times. 7 times they've been out in the first weekend. So in the last 25 years, they've got 5 titles and have either missed the tourney entirely or been out before the Sweet 16 in 15 of those years.
All or nothing,
they've only got 5 years where they've made the Sweet 16 and not won the title. In those 25 years, 3 of those 5 title games were against a 5 seed or worse. And over those 5 titles, it's been between 3 different coaches over 25 years. Jim Calhoun, Danny Hurley, and who was the man in the middle? It was Kevin. I didn't know if it was Kevin Ali. So pretty nice stuff. Clearly, talk radio or your first takes and whatever keep asking, hey, is UConn a blue blood now? I think they were before. I mean, they've won more titles than Kansas. So yeah, I mean, I think absolutely they're in that conversation with the Dukes, UNCs, Kansas's, Villanova, if you want to throw them in there as well as kind of the top teams. Overall, what are your thoughts on this tournament? I mean, this is one of my favorites in years. just with all the upsets and a lot of feel good stories. No real dominant team outside of UConn. It's been one of my favorite tournaments, at least in recent memory.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I thought I brought it up last episode, I think last week, but this is the tournament. The only seeds that didn't pull off an upset in this one were the 12 seed and the 13 seed, I believe. So it was one of those that, I mean, there's tons of upsets. You had 15, you had Arizona going down, Purdue going down first round. So a lot of huge upsets in this one. And you had two teams that San Diego State, Florida Atlantic, that made the Final Four that were playing for a national championship. That, yeah, we've seen San Diego State. They're a quiet powerhouse the last few years, but haven't been able to advance this far at all. But it's just cool seeing some of these teams that don't normally get a shot or perennial powerhouses making it to all these Final Fours get in. But yeah, it was a blast of a tournament. We had high hopes of it being a fantastic tournament just with all the parity throughout the regular season. You'd mentioned that there was numerous teams that hit that number one mark ranking throughout the season and just kind of kept flip-flopping all over the place within that top 10. But yeah, usually when we have high hopes, it ends up being a stinker. It's a lot of chalk, but this year it ended up being what we thought it was and had one of the better tournaments in recent memory. The only thing I will say, gotta love if there's a little bit more buzzer beaters. Didn't really have a ton outside of that San Diego State one in the Elite Eight to send them to the Final Four, but outside of that, it was.
And that's something that, buzzer beaters they're awesome, but like you can't really expect them, obviously.
Exactly.
So, no, I mean, and really complete opposite from last year's tournament where it was Kansas, UNC, Duke, Villanova.
Yeah.
And now this year, 3 of the 4 teams that made it was their first time in the Final Four. I think all 4 of them, it was like the first time within maybe outside of I know 3 of the 4, it was their first time in the Final Four. So great weekend, great tournament.
Absolutely. We can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. We are on YouTube, have been for a while. If you didn't know that, shame on you. You can find us via that search bar, type in Dead Arm Sports, subscribe, click the bell there. That way you know when our live episodes drop. We monitor that chat box. That way you can ask us any questions throughout the podcast. We usually are live on Tuesday or Wednesday. So if you subscribe, click that bell, you'll know when our live episodes drop. If you miss out on asking us questions there, we can be found on our socials at Dead Arm Sports, at DasGel, that's at DASJEL. I can be found at DasJPEC, that's at DASJPEC. Ask us any questions there. Give us a follow on all 3 of those handles, and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot and we will get you some sticker swag for free. I have a fun episode for you. It is April, which means the NFL draft is upon us. You are listening to us on Thursday. We're recording on Wednesday, but when you're listening to us, we are officially 3 weeks away from draft
big
night.
Time.
So
let's go.
Exciting stuff there. So we are going to kick off our draft preview. We have the AFC on the docket for today. We're going to run through each division, each team, and what their biggest draft need is. So each of us, we haven't shared what we think it is. So might have some that line up, and otherwise we'll have a little discussion on that. Once we're done with that, we have a quick Valero recap for you just to update you on the winner there and where Jill and I are on our picks. And then of course, it is Masters time. First round is kicking off today when you're listening to us, and we've got our Masters draft. Teeing off. Foot wedge. But no, without further ado, let's get into these AFC team draft needs. And first division I have up, Gel. I wrote them all down alphabetically here. So we're going to start in the AFC North and Baltimore. Interesting team here. And I guess I'll kick it off. For me, it's a question mark that hopefully gets resolved by the time that the draft kicks off. But right now, quarterback is their biggest draft need, assuming Lamar is gone. If you can get Lamar back under contract, I think it's wide receiver. You've got Mark Andrews there, which obviously has been an awesome piece of that offense, but they just can't seem to get that wide receiver in there that helps out in this offense, in the system that they've run. Yes, Rashad Bateman has shown flashes at times, but he's had trouble staying on the field. They've tried Hollywood Brown. That didn't work, and he got shipped off to Arizona last year. But I think that is a must, assuming they can get Lamar under contract and get him back in the fold. But if not, quarterback is by far their biggest need.
So it's interesting with this. They're right now they're slotted in at that number 22 overall pick, or I guess it'd be 21 since Miami forfeited a pick. No, they are at 22. So they got that number 22 pick. Do you say at that point you're the best quarterback that's going to be available would be I mean, you're getting that like third tier of quarterbacks, basically. I mean, if you're saying Bryce Young, CJ Stroud at the top as your most polished quarterbacks, your next tier is going to be the project pieces of Levis and Anthony Richardson. And by that point, if you're at 22, you're not going to have a chance at any of those four teams or any of those four players. You're dropping down to that third tier. What's the move? I mean, do you think that it's to jump up to maybe you trade up with the Colts, you give Lamar up for that number 4 pick, or do you go maybe wide receiver at that 22 spot? Because there should be some guys there at 22 if you want to go receiver there in the first round, and then you go see if you can get like a Max Duggan type in the second.
Yeah, and I think assuming if Lamar is gone and somebody matches or gives him a deal Baltimore doesn't want to match, they're going to get some picks coming over, and I think that's where they would end up using the quarterback. If it is the Colts, potentially that 4th overall pick is coming over to Baltimore, so I think that is how they would address it. Otherwise, at 22, you're probably looking at Hendon Hooker, which, I mean, he's 25 years old, so I don't think you want to spend a first-round pick on him. I think maybe the second round if he's there,
that's a nice fit though. They wouldn't have to change the offense over that much. He is 25, but this Ravens team, it's nice to have your franchise quarterback there for 10 years, but hey, you sign Hendon Hooker, he's there for 6 to 8. That's a nice run, and that's worth a late first round pick as long as he's able to perform. Now, the tricky thing with that is he's coming off that ACL, so that might be the reason to not go a Hooker there and maybe go attack that receiver room. I'm going to go with their Sunday night football rivals, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll start off there with my first team out of the AFC North. I think that the big thing that they have never really addressed and has been a need for them to address for the last 5+ years is that offensive line. I mean, Najee Harris, his rookie year, phenomenal, fresh legs, fresh out of college. But his second year, you saw the wear and tear already from him. His performance declined, his yards per carry declined. There were injury issues. They had to start using 3 different running backs, where in Najee's rookie year, I mean, he was basically their number 1 back on all 3 downs. So I think that offensive line they finally have to address it. I know Mike Tomlin's probably going to want to take, some impact secondary player or some tackling machine linebacker, but you can get an impact defensive, corner or secondary player. Probably in the second round, you can get a tackling machine in the 3rd, 4th round. I mean, Blake Martinez at one point for the Packers led the league in tackles, and he was, I believe, a 5th rounder for Green Bay. So I think that that's the move for Pittsburgh. Just go hammer out that offensive line. Give Kenny Pickett some time back there, because he's not a dynamic. It's not like he's a running quarterback that can survive behind a crappy offensive line.
Hey, he's got that fake slide in his repertoire from college days.
Did they outlaw? I know they outlawed that in college. I don't know if they did in the NFL, but that was such BS.
He
would get lit the fuck up if he did that in the NFL.
Big time. I've got O-line down too. That's their biggest need, pass and run blocking. I mean, Najee Harris was averaging under 3 yards a carry last year with that O-line. So you've invested a first-round pick in him. He's a dynamic running back if he can get some blocking. And again, like you said, a young quarterback with Kenny Pickett being there, you got to have some protection so that way he can develop, get comfortable in that pocket so he's not running around getting hit every time he drops back. So like you said, they have not really addressed this the last couple of years. Even Big Ben's last few years, he was getting just demolished back there. So they definitely need to just bite the bullet here and end up taking an O-lineman in this draft. Moving over to Cleveland.
Cleveland sucks. Cleveland sucks.
I'm going to go with defensive tackle. I think you just lost Jadeveon Clowney. And you need someone with Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is there. He's going to be a beast on that end. And you need somebody to plug up that middle, stop the run, get some pressure from that interior, and help out that defense. You've got offensive wise, I think you're fine. You're going to be able to put up points, assuming Deshaun is able to take a step forward from this last year where he was pretty much irrelevant. But that defensive tackle, if you can get an impact guy there to help out, I think that'll do wonders for them.
Yeah, I like that. I guess I'm going off pretty much the same logic that you just spilled out there. But you mentioned they lost Clowney. They obviously, with that Clowney signing, they've been trying to patch that missing second edge rusher for years. I mean, Myles Garrett's never had a rush end on the other side that's dependable and dynamic. So that's the first place that I'm going to go if I'm Cleveland. Probably go edge, try to get the most athletic guy out there. They do not have a first round pick though. No. And that's going to be the problem for them is who's going to be the dynamic guy later in later rounds. That doesn't generally exist, especially when you're talking about an edge rusher. Any dominant edge rusher is going early. So that edge rusher might not be out there because given that they would have had the number 12 pick, they gave that up for Deshaun Watson. That pick's now with Houston. So I think, I guess their first pick in the second round, you probably go interior D-line and then just try to get some depth and at the edge rush position. I also think it's important for them to add at least one running back in this draft, given that Kareem Hunt is a free agent. Nick Chubb, how much tread is left on those tires?
Just keeps chubbing along.
And I'd add another receiver as well. Donovan Peoples-Jones, he's kind of came along. David Bell had a few flashes last year. Amari Cooper's got 2 years left on this deal, but he could be cut given that Deshaun, the Watson money. They just got a lot of money tied up in a lot of guys. So I'd go get some wide receiver depth and running back depth later in the draft. But I think interior D-line is a good call. And the final team in the AFC North, the Cincinnati Bengals. Rawr.
We're on to Cincinnati.
I think their biggest need right now is running back, just given the status of Joe Mixon. It seems like he's been talked about as a cut candidate for this year, given that he's on his final year of his contract. He's going to want some big money, but sitting at 28, you don't have a shot at Bijan Robinson, and there's not really another running back in this draft that's worth taking in the first round. So I think at that point, you can turn to the secondary, or you could turn to wide receiver. T. Higgins is on the last year of his deal. Can they afford to extend Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins and Joe Mixon? I don't think so, Scooter. So I think you might want to go.
Jeanette.
Scoots. He had that 1 year, man, and ended up getting paid by Cincy. No, I mean, at that point, I think the first place you need to attack is safety. They lost both their starting safeties in free agency this year, and I think that's probably the easiest for the position need. Safety and a starting caliber safety is probably in need there, and then you just get depth in those other positions that I had mentioned.
You hit the nail on the head there. We have the same thing. I wrote down safety / running back for this one. You mentioned they lost both their starting safeties via free agency this year. So getting a young impact guy in there is probably in the cards later on. You're not going to get the top safety off the board, but you can get someone that is NFL ready to start and could be an impact guy for you. And then, yeah, what's the status of Joe Mixon? There's been talks that he's a possible cut candidate, trade candidate. And like you said, unless Bijan were to fall, which he's not going to, then I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is probably the next guy up, but like you said, he's small. He's not worth a first round running back pay grade. So, and if he's there in the second round, maybe, but that's something you can address later on in the draft.
If you get, and there's depth to this running back class. There's just only one guy that's special
first round.
So I think running back second round is ideal.
Yep. Moving into the AFC South. Yeah. Houston, you are on the clock at the number 2 pick, and you're going to get your quarterback, which that is your biggest need. So they're not going to get the first pick unless they end up swindling a trade with Carolina and move up to that 1 spot. But you're still probably going to get your top choice here. I think ultimately CJ Stroud ends up in Carolina and Bryce Young is there. And I think Bryce Young is a decent fit for Houston. So quarterback's their biggest need. They are a young team. They do have other needs as well, but number 2 pick in the draft, you're taking quarterback here, and I don't think they're looking elsewhere.
Your top 5 positions in the NFL, I would argue, are quarterback, edge rush, offensive line, offensive tackle, really specifically, wide receiver, and corner. They've got Derek Stingley had a nice rookie season. He was, he wasn't Sauce Gardner. They missed on that. They should have taken Sauce at 3 and let Derek Stingley go to the Jets at 4. But Stingley had a really nice season. They have needs at those other 4 positions, though. Your 4 of your top 4 positions are all needs. Yes, you go. I think absolutely you go quarterback with that number 2 pick. That's obvious. That's obvious that's what they're going to do. Unless somebody gives them, a butt ton of picks and to move up to 2 and they move down and then tank another season, which, hey, I don't think that's off the board. And then they've got that number 12 pick, as I'd previously mentioned, from Cleveland. So if they go wide receiver there, maybe a Jackson Smith and Jigba, Quentin Johnson type, that feels a little bit high, but they don't have a number 1 receiver at the moment unless Nico Collins finally breaks out, as we have predicted for the last 3 years. No, I think they go fresh at wide receiver. They go fresh at quarterback for their first 2 picks. And then I think you just tackle that offensive line later on, grab some edge rushers, again, the most important things.
Best overall player.
Yeah. At that point, I think honestly, once you get your quarterback, take best overall player. They've got needs all over the place. So but yeah, QB obviously at number 1. And if they get Bryce Young, he'd be perfect for them. Southern kid playing in a dome, not playing, smaller guy, but not going to have to play in nasty weather too often, at least within the division. He won't. So I think that's a great fit for them. I will move over to the next team in this draft that falls down as the number 4 overall pick, the Indianapolis Colts, and their number 1 need, again, quarterback. Now the question
they didn't sign some old aged veteran this year?
It's going to happen at some point. I was a little disappointed when Brian Hoyer signed with the Raiders. I thought that's where the Colts were going to end up having to go.
Andy Dalton seemed like an ideal.
He's out. No, he's in Carolina, man.
I know.
That would have been a perfect fit. Maybe they go back after Wentz or try to get Rivers back out of retirement. But the question is, who's going to be available there at 4? Because if it goes Stroud, Bryce, somebody trades up to 3, which God, I don't know if Richardson or Levis are worth trading up to 3 for, because you're going to have to give up picks. But if, the Raiders do that and they take an Anthony Richardson and Will Levis is sitting there at 4, if you're Indy, is that worth it?
Yeah,
but what else? What are your other options? That's when maybe you pivot to the Lamar Jackson sweepstakes and just because even though Lamar is signed to that $32 million franchise tag, and if he is still eligible to be traded in a conventional way. So he doesn't have to be traded for the 2 first round picks. He could be traded for just the 4th overall, for example. So, I think that's an option. Otherwise, I would add a running back as well, get somebody behind Jonathan Taylor. They've got Zach Moss, but God, he's been nothing. So, and they lost Nyheim Hines. So I think they need to add some running back depth behind Jonathan Taylor. Offensive line, particularly offensive tackle, has been questionable. So I think that's another move that they need to make.
Yeah, no, I agree with all those. That quarterback position's the big one. They've been trying to put Band-Aids on that since Andrew Luck retired, essentially, with Jacoby Brissett for a little bit. But it's just a matter of, are they going to have to make a move up to that number 3 spot, which I think if they are set and getting their quarterback this year, I think they have to. It's going to cost you a little bit, but it's worth not having another team come up and jump you. And I think that you could get it for a decent price because Arizona is still going to be able to get their pick, who they were going to take at 3, and just move back a spot. And who knows, maybe then they could make another pick if the Colts come in and take a quarterback that another team wasn't as high on and Levis falls or Anthony Richardson falls. But ultimately, if you're Indianapolis, I was surprised that they didn't make a trade with the Bears to move up for 1. But I think they need to move up to 3 to get that quarterback. That is something that they need to have. They haven't had that cornerstone since Andrew Luck, which it's been 5 years now, I think. So it's
been 8 or 7.
7? Okay. Yeah.
Or no, I think it's been 5. This will be the 6th season with a brand new opening day starting quarterback. It's been 8 different starters over these last 5 years. Insanity.
Just crazy. But no, that's for sure. Those 2, Indianapolis, Houston, they will be looking quarterback. Moving to Jacksonville. Jacksonville has a nice young team right now. I really like everything that they're doing. I think just more so D-line. I think if you can beef up that D-line, get more of a pass rush going, that'll do wonders with that defense. The defense is young right now, but getting a nice edge guy to come in, get some sacks, put some pressure, and create havoc in that backfield, I think that'll do wonders for them.
Yeah, they had some issues. They've had some issues defending the run. I think getting an interior D lineman would be great. The other thing to consider here, they've got the number 24 overall pick, and that you might be able to get that second best tight end in this draft, which from all reports looks to be Dalton Kincaid. And, he's a big tight end. Evan Ingram is on the franchise tag. So you grab a tight end in that first round. We've talked about this before, particularly when we're talking fantasy. A lot of times rookie tight ends don't have much of an impact, but once they get into their second year, that's kind of when they can start making their moves. So I think 24 is a great spot to get that second best tight end in this draft and, have Ingram and Kincaid in 2 tight end sets along with Lawrence, Calvin Ridley. They did lose Marvin Jones, so I'd like to see them add another receiver later in this draft and probably get some more running back depth behind ETN. But I think tight end, edge rusher, and an interior D-line, those are really their 3 big needs. And moving off to the final team here in the AFC South, the Tennessee Titans. Question is, what the hell is going on with these rumors that they have been in talks to move up to 3 with Arizona? And if you're Indy, you're shitting your pants right now.
Big time.
And have the 3rd pick at quarterback just within your own division. So if Tennessee does end up moving up, so it seems pretty clear that they're not extremely invested in Malik Willis right now. He was only a 3rd round pick. He didn't look great in limited action last year. We all know he was a project, but again, he looked pretty bad last year. So I think it sounds like if they're willing to move up to 3, it sounds like quarterback is a need for them that they see. And it means that Malik Willis is not the future. I also think they need to, Taylor Lewan, their offensive tackle that's been there for years, he just retired. That's definitely a need. And then depth behind Derrick Henry. looks like there were rumors that he was on the block, the trading block for, a few months ago. I bet he ends up sticking around there. I don't know what kind of offers you're getting for 1 year of Derrick Henry at this point, but this may be his last year with Tennessee. So I think adding some running back depth also is important.
Yeah, no, for sure. I have O-line as their biggest need, specifically tackle. Like you said, Taylor Lewan retiring is a huge hole in that O-line right now. And that's a huge piece to build your franchise around. And again, I mean, this is all assuming, like you said, that Tannehill's still under center, but I don't think that's a long-term answer, but I don't know that necessarily for them it's worth sacrificing the future to get the third best quarterback in this draft right now. So I think they stay put, take a tackle and get that piece and then worry about it this next offseason. They didn't really give Malik Willis that big of a run this year for whatever reason. He came in a few games, but they didn't give him that great of a look. So I wonder if maybe they'll end up doing that and then just kind of seeing where they're at the end of this season with a little bit deeper quarterback draft class next year too. But
I think that's probably the move. I mean, if you end up taking Anthony Richardson there at 3, it's like you've just got another project on your hands. So that would be kind of endless. I bet that trade doesn't happen before draft day and they see who the first 2 picks are.
Yep. Let's move over to the AFC West. I'll kick it off with the defending Super Bowl champions. And unless they make a trade, Kansas City Chiefs, unless they make a trade for DeAndre Hopkins, I think wide receiver is a huge hole right now with them. Been beating the dead horse on that the last couple episodes. Seems like it's popped up that KC needs a wide receiver, but you should have a decent pick there with that transition from the end of the first into that second round. Should be able to get a guy there and give Patrick Mahomes an actual threat again that he hasn't had since Tyreek Hill's there. Yes, Travis Kelce's awesome, but he's not going to be there forever. Get a nice young wide receiver, fits in that system that can be a huge weapon and be even more of a threat in that dynamic Chiefs offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, as much as we don't find Juju Smith-Schuster to be much of an impact player, he did catch 85 balls last year, and he's now a Patriot. So that just
good luck catching 85 balls from Mac Jones.
Hey, Bailey Zappi, okay? Put some respect on Zappi's name. I think that's their biggest need. You'd think Sky Moore comes in year 2 and he's going to have a bigger impact. But again, right now, what are you going to do with MVS? I mean, MVS, taking a flyer on Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney. Is he really going to? Again, he's not like a good, much of a possession receiver. He's kind of like one of those Percy Harvin type of guys. And beyond that, there's nothing beyond that unless you count John Ross. So
good gravy.
Yeah, that's a bigger bust than Darius Hayward-Bay somehow. So I think wide receiver is a great spot, especially being late in the first round. You're going to have a chance to get still a good receiver there. Offensive line, I'm still going to put there. They lost Malcolm Brown to that massive contract from Cincinnati.
Orlando.
What did I say?
Malcolm.
Was Malcolm Brown
is he running back or is he on the defensive
Malcolm Brown
side?
Is that second or third string Rams running back from a ways back?
Yep.
Whoops. Orlando Brown. He's gone, he's gone, goes to the rival Bengals. So for that really nice payday, I don't blame him. So I think those are the 2 biggest needs. Running back depth. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is gone. Isaiah Pacheco is felt, he's pretty much taken over that number 1 role, but Edwards-Helaire is clearly, I think he's on his last legs with KC at this point. So that's something I would add later in the draft though.
Yeah. Which team you want to head to next?
Oh shoot,
Joe?
That's mine again. Let's go over to the LA Chargers. A lot of, I think they're really set for this season, but running back, that's an immediate need. I think that's the most immediate need right now, given these Austin Eckler trade rumors. I guess the Chargers have officially granted him, hey, go ahead, seek a trade. If you can find a partner that's willing to meet your contract needs, who knows if that happens. So I think that's got to be their number one focus. And then their number two focus has to be, to me, wide receiver. You never really know what you're getting from Keenan Allen week to week. If he's going to show up,
if he's even on the field healthy.
That's what I'm saying. If he's going to if he's going to physically be on the field. Same thing with Mike Williams. We've been waiting for Josh Palmer or
hardly know her.
Or Mike's boy, Josh Palmer, or Jalen Guyton to step up and kind of fill in that number two role if one of those guys are out. And that hasn't really happened. So I think you got to go get yourself a wide receiver too, somebody that you can really rely on, because your two starting wide receivers are not reliable. I'd also throw in another edge rusher to go next to Joey Bosa. And in case Joey Bosa gets ejected from another game, that guy can step in and fill that role. And then also I'll throw corner in there as well. They spent big money on JC Jackson last offseason, and that ended up being a disaster. So add an additional corner as well.
Yeah, I don't have much else to add. I have running back down because of that Austin Eckler trade rumors. With that, like you said, today we just had news come out that they granted him permission to seek a trade. So we'll see if anything does come of that before the draft. But regardless, I still think they need someone behind him, because he's not going to be back after this year, and you can have whoever the next guy is step up and do that role. And then I agree completely with that wide receiver position too. You've got two guys that are injury prone, that are not consistent. You're in a decent spot in that middle of the draft that you can get probably a top 3 wide receiver in this draft class, maybe even your number one on the board, depending on who they value as well. So I think that could absolutely be a must for them. Moving over to Denver.
Yeah, that number 21 spot. Sorry, that number 21 spot, you should still be able to get a nice receiver there.
Yep. Moving over to Denver, both sides of the line, offense and defense. They got Mike McGlinchey to come over from San Francisco, so that was a nice piece.
Spent a ton of money on him.
Ton of money.
Oh my God.
That's good. You need Russ some protection there. He needs all the time in the world back there these days, it seems like, to overthrow receivers, but got to invest there. And then the defensive line too. They traded away Bradley Chubb last year to Miami, so I think getting someone else in to replace him, that's probably a bigger need over that O-line with that Mike McGlinchey signing. But both sides of the ball, I think, are a must.
Yeah, and they did also sign a higher dollar, another offensive, it was another guard. So they've tried to buy their offensive line. I think that was the right move. Sean Payton has always valued that offensive line. Yeah. I mean, given big money to well-deserving to Ryan Ramczyk. I mean, it's pretty clear. And they had Max Unger back in the day at center, who was one of the top centers in the league. So he's always valued that position and clearly paid off in New Orleans. But yeah, I'd say beyond that, number one need for me is edge rush to replace Bradley Chubb. They got a first for him from Miami. So they otherwise wouldn't have had a first round pick due to that Russell Wilson trade, but they do have the Dolphins first rounder. So I think that you attack pass rush here. Beyond that, I'm going to go running back is probably, like a depth running back. Javonte Williams is nice, but he's coming off an injury. And I think we all saw that Mike Boone wasn't the answer as the number 2 back. And as one who traded for him in fantasy, clearly saw that
Samaje
he wasn't the answer.
Joe.
Yikes. I was in a desperate spot there. And then I think maybe late in the round, late in the draft, you can grab yourself a receiver in case Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton. I mean, KJ Hamler really hasn't done anything special, and they do have there's one of their third receivers
Tim
coming
Patrick.
back. Timmer Got to get one of those in. So he's coming back, but I still think you can add a receiver late in the draft. Moving on to the last team in the division for a good reason. The Vegas Raiders.
Yes. I was hoping you were going to say Oakland.
I think their number one need is probably quarterback. There's so many quarterback needy teams. Jimmy G, bridge guy at this point. He's not going to be your long-term starter. He might not be your starter through 6 weeks. I mean, and they don't have really much of a backup plan here. They signed mentioning Brian Hoyer for the second time on this show. The Raiders just signed him probably to be the backup to Jimmy G. You got to go get yourself a young QB. That number 3 spot that Arizona's in, they're going to have some nice bidders, I think, there between Indy, Vegas, possibly Tennessee. Who knows? There may be a wild card that's later in this draft, a Minnesota that may be saying, hey, let's go up and get our guy after Kirk Cousins. So
Tampa Bay.
Although Baker Mayfield, future of the league.
Yeah. Yep.
That's my number one need for them by a mile. And then just, again, pretty much any other important position, cornerback, edge rush, offensive line, anything outside of receiver, pretty much they have needs at. So I think quarterback and then best player available.
Yep. Agree completely. It's quarterback. They need the future of their franchise. And like you said, I wrote down here, need quarterback of the future, but will he be there at number 7? I don't know if it is. I think you're going to end up having to
unless
move up,
Richardson or Levis falls a little bit, but
and I think
who knows?
Levis is your best chance because I think with Richardson's pro day, a lot of teams are in awe with his athleticism that you're going to end up having somebody move up in front of you if it is Levis picked in front of Richardson. So I think their best bet is Will Levis falling there, but I don't know. I think you have to move up if you are set. And if you're not, then whatever, just sit around and wait till next year and draft a O-line or get someone else in there best overall at number 7. But if you can get that quarterback position addressed, you need to, because like you said, Jimmy G hasn't been able to stay healthy his entire career. And I see that being the same. And yeah, Brian Hoyer, enough said.
That about wraps that up.
Last division we're going to touch on today is that AFC East, of course, and we'll kick it off with the Buffalo Bills here because no one circles the wagon like the Buffalo Bills, Joe.
Nobody circles an L in the AFC Championship game like the Buffalo Bills or before.
Right. And for me, they lost a few pieces on defense via free agency, but I think their biggest thing that they need, one is the running back, but I'm not going to touch on that because it's the Bills and they don't utilize it. So I don't think it's worthy of them to take a running back in this draft because they're not going to use them. I think it's wide receiver. I think you need a solid number 2 behind Stephon Diggs. Gabe Davis has been so inconsistent in that number 2 role. As much as I love Gabe Davis, I think he's better off in that number 3. And I think if you can get a number 2 wide receiver opposite Diggs, that offense could be absolutely electric, even more so than it already is.
Yeah, I have wide receiver as my number 1 need as well. If Bijan Robinson were to fall to them at 27, I think that's the only guy that you take there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, you take a running back later in the draft. They lost they lost Devin Singletary this offseason to Houston, and then the Zach Moss trade. They do have is Nyheim Hines still there? Doesn't matter. If you can get if Bijan Robinson is there, you just take him at 27, but I doubt he makes it that far. So yeah, I think wide receiver, there's going to be an impact guy. You said it perfectly. Gabe Davis is a great number 3. I don't think he's reliable enough to be a number 2. He's basically a guy that can stretch the field and what else? Perfect for a number 3. But not somebody that you can be relying on as a number 2. I also think maybe in your second, third round, grab an edge rusher, somebody that can learn behind Von Miller. And, Von did sign that really huge deal, but the guaranteed money on it was not that significant. So Buffalo could move off of him pretty much any year after this season or maybe the following. Get a developmental project late and attack attack that position later in the draft. I'm going to move over to the Jets. I guess I'm going to assume here that they don't trade their first rounder for Aaron Rodgers. They acquire him for, a couple seconds or something, or a second and then a comp pick the next year that could turn into a first next year, something like that. So I'm assuming they still have their number 13 pick. And I think that if they can get a shot at Skoronski or Paris Johnson at that number 13 spot, you take that as your offensive tackle of the future. Mekhi Becton, when he's on the field, very productive. Problem is, he's always overweight, and therefore he's always getting hurt. That was the issue with taking him when he was drafted. There were concerns about him being overweight, and those issues have clearly come into fruition. I think you take an offensive lineman here if you can get one of the top two guys, top two tackles in this draft at that number 1 spot. Beyond that, a second corner or a safety, somebody else on the other side of Sauce Gardner to kind of help really shut down that the opponent's passing game. And then I go wide receiver. Elijah Moore's gone. It sounds like Corey Davis has a pretty good chance to be released. So I think wide receiver later in the draft is a good option as well. They also lost Braxton Berrios, underrated player.
Got Alan Lazard though, Joe.
Yeah, he's a great number 3.
Yeah. No, with the New York Jets, it's offensive tackle for sure, especially assuming Rodgers ends up getting traded over to the Jets. You don't need the quarterback position, obviously, there. So with the tackle position, that is going to be what they end up needing and will help protect Rodgers. He's going to be mad if that line is not good. We've seen that in years past at Green Bay, and that's when he struggles. He needs some protection back there. He's not the same player he was 10 years ago, and he can make some plays with his feet. He can make a few here and there, but not to the extent that he used to be. So getting a tackle, like you said, I think one of those top 3 guys will be there when they pick in those early teens. So that's a fantastic call out there. And I think we'll move over to Miami here. We'll save New England for last. And with Miami, it's the same thing. I think you need to address that O-line. We've seen every single year here that Miami needs to draft an O-lineman here, especially with Tua and the hits he was taking last year. You got to get him protection. This offseason, they made it clear that Tua, they think he is going to be the future there. He had a fantastic year last year until he had all those concussions. So getting him protection is an absolute must in this draft. And they don't have their first round pick this year. It was forfeited. So it's going to be tough. You're going to have to find a little bit of a project there in the second round, maybe a little diamond in the rough action. But ultimately, I think that's what they need to do. They're pretty set in a lot of other areas. They've addressed it in years past, otherwise via trades, free agency. I like this Miami team a lot, but get that line beefed up.
Yeah, I originally had corner as a pretty high need, but I forgot they traded for Jalen Ramsey.
Yes.
So that's immediately your top cornerback duo in Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey there. So that takes care of that pretty quickly.
Nasty.
That's nasty. I would say yes, absolutely. Offensive line is a need. They've got some high dollar pieces over there. Terron Armstead, one of the best tackles in the league, but he had some injury issues last year. And when that happened, that's when Terron Armstead was out. That's when Tua got how many, either his second or third concussion. I don't know. It's hard to keep track of when those were.
Terrible.
But so, yeah, I think they got to get better there. And then, yeah, it'd be good to add some pass rush later in the draft.
New England's
and
last
but not last and certainly least, the New England Patriots, led by Bill Belichick's shitty draft resume. Don't you have to go wide receiver here? I mean,
yeah,
I don't know, unless you go after D-Hop. Even if you go after D-Hop, you still should go wide receiver, I think, with that first pick. I mean, they've been desperate for playmakers, and they haven't, somehow they just can't get accrue playmakers. Instead, what was it, a couple years ago when they signed Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, and spent big money on both of them. And then
drafted N'Keal Harry, I think. N'Keal Harry.
N'Keal Harry. Like they're it's not like they're not trying. They just suck at it. So I think you just have to, throw out another, line in the barrel and see if you can finally reel in a fish.
Yeah, I've got two keys to a successful Mac Jones from his days at Alabama, and that is a solid O-line and a solid wide receiver core. He needs all of the help he can get. So I think either O-line, wide receiver, yes, that wide receiver position, but if it's been Bill Belichick, whoever has been picking out these wide receivers for them to draft the last couple of years, don't let them in the draft room. Go to someone else's opinion on it, because you have not had a solid wide receiver there in quite a long time.
Randy Moss? Yes,
Randy Moss is probably the last one. I mean, Julian Edelman was awesome, but he was a product of Tom Brady too. He was also a seventh
rounder that came out of Kent State as a quarterback. Like he was not, he wouldn't have worked he wouldn't have worked anywhere else the way that he did in New England.
Yeah. But so I think if you can get Mac Jones needs weapons. I mean, he's not going to win you games if he doesn't have guys that can go up and get the ball. So absolutely. All right, Jill, almost to the Masters, but first we have the Valero Texas Open to recap.
Make it snappy.
Corey Connors coming off of the victory there. Finished at minus 15, had a minus 4 final round to hold off Sam Stevens. Corey Connors only had one birdie on the entire back nine in this tournament. So when I say he held off his opponents, he held off his opponents. So not the greatest of back nines, but ends up with the victory there. Stevens also eagled 17, drove the green, had a nice eagle putt made there, and then he parred 18. Finished one shot back, parred 18. So yeah, definitely could have been a little bit different there, but overall, fun tournament. Not a lot of big names with the Masters this week. Understandable. People getting to Augusta to prep for that. Take some time off. Joe went with Siwoo Kim last week. Ended up finishing minus 3. So you are currently at minus 92. And I went with Ricky Fowler, who turned in a minus 6 final round.
Good Sunday.
Yeah, had a fantastic Sunday. Ended up at minus 8. So got me back a little bit. Only 12 strokes back. So I'll take it. We're heading into a little bit of a break here in our picks. So 12 shots.
Hey,
we'll take it.
It's not like you're going to gain all 18 strokes back or whatever that number was. So in one tournament. So
not much. Yeah. I picked the winner that goes off and you pick
possible, but
I'd have to pick first place. You'd have to pick last place.
Like somebody that missed the cut completely and just completely pissed themselves.
Yes.
Similar to, or like an Adam Scott where he makes the cut and then his Saturdays, Sundays, he ends up going like 6 over total.
Yeah. All right. On to my favorite and a lot of people's favorite golf tournaments of the year, the Masters. And I am pumped. Everyone knows the course, Augusta National, par 72, 7,500 yards. Scotty Scheffler, defending champion, ended up, 4 putting 18 last year and still cruised to victory because it was ridiculous. But I'll run through, obviously not running through all the notables because I'd pretty much read off the entire tournament list.
We got 89 players in this tournament. We don't need all 89 names.
Yep. So just some of the fun pairings that they have. Tiger Woods, Big Dick, Vic Hovland, Xander Schauffele. Got Justin Thomas, John Rahm, Cam Young. Cam Smith is mixed in with Hideki Matsuyama, Sungjae Im. So you got a live guy in there. And Bryson DeChambeau's in with Francesco Molinari, JT Poston. So kind of put
that's amazing.
Interesting grouping there. I was wondering what they would end up doing with Phil. They ended up putting him in with Siwoo Kim and Tom Hoagie. Tom Hoagie coming off of the par 3 tournament championship today. Finished with minus 6. Had a nice hole-in-one on number 8. 5 total hole-in-ones today. Shout out to Seamus Powers. Back-to-back aces on 8 and 9. So pretty awesome there. Another one, Matt Fitzpatrick, Colin Morikawa, Will Zalatoris, I thought was pretty sweet. Got the defending champion, Scotty Scheffler, Max Homa, and amateur Sam Bennett. So throwing the amateur in with Homa and Scheffler. First round of the Masters. So that one is going to be fun.
Imagine him winning that group on day one. God.
Yeah. Got Tom Kim, Rory McIlroy, and Rory McIlroy's opponent from 2 weeks ago in that quarterfinals, Sam Burns. So that should be a fun one. And then I think my favorite one I'm going to be tuned into, we got Jordan Spieth, Tommy Fleetwood, Tony Finau. So I think that'll be an absolute fun threesome to watch too. So any betting favorites here, Joe? I know it's going to be an interesting week. Tomorrow sounds like it's okay, or today, Thursday round sounds like the weather is going to be okay, but wet conditions Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I don't want to talk about Monday finishes, but
that's what I was just about to mention is Thursday looks great. Prime weather, sun, nice, comfortable in the 70s. Friday, 80% chance of rain. And then highs are still in the 70s on that Friday, but then you go to Saturday and those highs drop down into the 50s. Right now,
89 there today during the par 3, and it's going to be in the 50s on Saturday.
It's going to drop down 30 degrees, at least 30 degrees for Friday's round. They're showing right now 100% chance of rain, so hopefully that doesn't impact us too much.
It's going to rain.
It's going to rain. Thank you. and then Sunday, there's also right now they're showing a 70% chance of rain. So hopefully Saturday, everything clears out. There's maybe a little morning shower on Sunday, and then it clears out. If we have to push it to a Monday finish, it happens. But that's unfortunate that that's going to play a factor here. But as you mentioned, let's get into some of the top bets. Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler at the top at plus 750. John Rahm right behind them at plus 950. Jordan Spieth actually coming in at 4th. He's won this event before. He plays this course well, so I guess I'm not shocked that he's in that top 4, but he hasn't had the best season so far.
No.
But he does play this course well, and he obviously loves big events. So he's your number 4 betting favorite. And then Patrick Cantlay right behind him at 1,800. And then Justin Thomas rounding out your top 6 at plus 2,000. Just a couple of live guys, your high name live guys. Cam Smith is at plus 2,200. Dustin Johnson, 2,500. And then Brooks Koepka also at plus 2,500. So they're certainly not counting these guys out. I mean, 25-1 odds on DJ Brooks, guys. Cam Smith, or I don't think Cam's won it this year, but he's been in final round contention before at the Masters. DJ has won it. I know Brooks has like 4 major victories. He's never won the Masters though, right?
No, it's just been PGA championships. And
does he have a US Open?
Might be US.
I think he's got a US Open in there, but yeah, no green jacket for him. But DJ's won it here just a few years back.
Fall Masters.
Yep. That's right. That was the Fall Masters. I won $200 on him.
Monopoly money.
Monopoly money. Yeah.
Hashtag not a sponsor.
2 more guys. Tiger, obviously betting interest on him. He's a little further back as expected, plus 6,500. And then Bryson DeChambeau plus 10,000. So he's never played this course well. Even when he was at his prime, the guy can't hit a fairway. And if you can't hit a fairway here at Augusta, this is one of those courses that they, it's a second shot course. Hit the fairway, make a nice second shot, and you've got a chance as long as your chipping is halfway decent. And we'll get more into the chipping as we get into our picks.
Ooh, little foreshadowing there, Joe.
Little tease, little nugget.
All right. All right. So at this time, we are taking a break from our weekly picks here and going to do our first major draft of the year with the Masters. So how this works, I'm going to flip a coin here in a minute. Joel's going to call heads or tails for the first pick in the draft. And we're just going to snake draft. So this is a Ryder Cup style format. So whoever our first picks are, they're matched up head to head. So each matchup's worth a point. We're going to have 5 matchups total. We're each going to pick 5 golfers. Once you pick a guy, you cannot use them again for the remaining majors. So it is a fresh start. So anybody we have picked up to this point, that's a whole separate thing. So we have a fresh slate here, can pick any of the golfers. If you win your matchup, you get a point. If we end up tying at the end of the tournament and both guys make the cut, finish with the same score, we each get half a point. And if you don't make the cut, so if both of us don't make the cut in that specific matchup, no points are awarded. Obviously, if somebody makes the cut, misses the cut, doesn't matter what they finish the tournament with, whoever made the cut in that matchup is going to get that point there. So little strategy here, little matchup based as well. So if somebody picks a guy that's a little bit inconsistent, maybe you match up somebody that is a little bit more consistent against them, but kind of a little fun thing here that we like to do each year. Anything else you want to add, Joe, before I ask you heads or tails and flip this nice coin here?
What state is this quarter?
I knew you were going to ask. Let me take a peek here.
Reading is fundamental.
It's I had to take a look. So it's Effigy Mounds out of Iowa. So it's a different quarter. It's not I guess it's like a national
park. Is that a national park?
Yeah, that's kind of. So got that guy on one side.
What a beautiful coin. And Big George on the other side.
So, all right, Joe.
Flip it. I'll call tails.
Heads or tails.
Going with Iowa. They just made the Women's College National Championship final.
It is tails. You finally won a coin toss here, Joe, and you have the first pick.
I'm going with the repeat champion here. I'm going Scotty Scheffler. I went back and forth between a couple of guys, but I'm going to lock in Big Scotty. I mean, he's just been the best player in the world since Rahm, had his little tummy ache a few weeks ago at the Players, and Scotty's been on a run. So, and obviously won it last year. He's been the previous year he'd won the Phoenix Open. He went back to back there. So I feel like if he's familiar with his courses, he loves them. He plays well at them. And he's the number one bet on the board for a reason.
Nope. I like that pick. He was up there in consideration had I got that one pick, but I'm going to go here. Oh, side note, I did forget to mention, since we don't get to see a whole lot of live coverage, we are going to say that we have to pick 4 live golfers throughout this. So you can pick them all 4 in one tournament. You can spread them out evenly as well. So that's just
amongst the 4
stipulation
majors.
Amongst the 4 majors.
4 total live golfers each amongst the 4 majors.
Yep. My first one off of the board here is somebody that was a third place finisher here a couple weeks ago. He needs this one for the career Grand Slam. Poppy was his caddy today on the par 3 course. I'm going with Rory McIlroy. Rory's been playing pretty decent lately. I think if it's going to happen, now is a perfect opportunity for him. Finished awesome last year in that final round. He just has a tough time coming out of the gate initially, and that's kind of where it sets him back. Usually has solid weekends, but I think he comes out of the gate this year. I think he's motivated, fired up for this, and I like Rory, especially with some of these wet conditions. I think he's going to excel there and have a little leg up over some of the other guys. So I will lock in Rory, and I have the quick turnaround now, and I'm going to use one of these live golfers, and I'm going to go with a guy that has been on a tear. He's finally healthy, or so he says, and it's Brooks Koepka. Brooks Koepka coming off of a win last week on the live tour, and I like him this week. He's played historically pretty decent at Augusta, so I'm going to roll with him this week.
Yeah, he got that win out in Orlando on a public course that apparently goes for about $60 a round. So not exactly your most premier course in the continental United States, but yeah, hey, like you said, he got the win last week, so that's worth something. And yeah, he's going for his first green jacket. Why don't we do this? Why don't we pair up our live guys?
All right.
And I'll go with my moneymaker, Dustin Johnson, for my second round pick here. I would have loved to take Brooks. He would have been my first live guy, but I like the idea of pairing up live guys, going head to head here and seeing who's the premier guy on the live tour outside of live golf. So we'll lock in DJ for your boy Gel. My third round pick, Xander Schauffele. He's just plays really good and really well in big moments, big events. He's never won a major, but I mean, if he I think this year might be his year to finally get one. He's been last year, especially, he finished off that season so hot. He's been at the top or near the top of a ton of leaderboards lately. So basically this whole season. So I'm going to ride Xander.
I like it. I'm going to match Xander up and take him on with a guy that has also been playing lights out this year on the tour, and that's Max Homa. Max Homa has been playing phenomenal golf. I was watching him today in the par 3. He was playing with JT and Spieth, and he was dialed in. I mean, he was hitting, I mean, granted, they're all like 100-yard holes, but he was dialed in today with his wedges. So I like it this week. He's been putting absolutely lights out so far this year. We're watching him in that Dell match play and just sinking some incredible putts. Obviously, he's a clutch guy, so I like him quite a bit this week. And then I'm going to roll out a guy that also finished a nice Sunday round last year, a guy that has won majors before, and that's Collin Morikawa. I like Collin Morikawa in this one. Hasn't won a green jacket yet, but he's somebody that also has been playing some pretty decent golf so far this year, and I think he's going to shine at Augusta.
Morikawa would have been my pick here if he would have slipped to me, you son of a bitch. I mean, great iron player, and that's what you need. Like I had previously mentioned, it's about your second shot at Augusta. Obviously, I'm not saying your drive doesn't matter, but your second, if you bomb it into the trees like Bryson typically does, that's why he's always out after, the first day, basically hitting his, going for 78. But Morikawa's more than a capable driver, and that second shot, his iron play has always been elite. So I love that pick. I would have gone there. But I'm going to go with somebody that I think is on his level this year that's been playing freaking awesome. And that's Jason Day. He's just a really clean player. You don't see him completely he's not going to bomb the shit out of the ball. He's not going to be one of those guys that makes, Phil Mickelson types of flop shots and that kind of stuff. That's always super fun to watch, but he's just a really consistent player. And I like my pick here with J Day.
I like it. He's on my short list of guys.
Going a little bit further down my list, my top 7 are now gone, but thankfully we're in the last round, so that's just fine. I'm going to ride the hot hand. Corey Connors just winning the Valero. He's had a number of nice tournaments this year. I'm not expecting him to win it. I'm not expecting him to, finish up there in the top 10, top 5, or, he could be a top 10. I'm not saying he's going to be in the top 4 by the time we get to Sunday, but he's coming off a nice round there at Valero. He's been up near the top of a few leaderboards, and I like the way he's playing. So Mr. Corey Connors, the Canadian, I
like it. No, he's been hot, and yeah, for sure. But I am going to go with another guy that's a little bit down my list here. And I think I'm picking him because I don't know if he's going to win a major, do well. I think this is the one. I don't know that he has the game necessarily to win any of the other ones the rest of the year. And a guy that's historically played fairly decent at the Masters. He was runner-up the year that Tiger won it, and that's Tony Baloney Finau. Tony Finau has played pretty well at Augusta. He's had a nice game so far this year as well. So I'm gonna roll with Tony here because, like I said, I like him at the Masters. I don't know that I really like him at some of the other courses and some of the other majors throughout the season.
Yep, good call. I got notes on 2 guys that I wasn't sure how this was going to play out, but it played out in my favor for the notes that I wrote down for these 2 guys. Big Vic Dick. You notice that he's not in there. He, I think, will be in contention in future majors down the road, but I mean, his wedge play, his chipping, that's such a big deal here at Augusta, and that's been his kryptonite his entire career. That's why he was a no-go for me. I'm sure same with you. And then Jon Rahm, number 3 pick on the board, number 3 pick, at least according to the Vegas boards. Neither of us touched him, and he seems to have fallen off pretty hard since he got his tummy ache at the Players Championship. I think he could be a guy that's there at the end, but there's also just as good of a chance that he's not. And the fact that he hasn't been playing well lately, does he return back to his hothead previous self and ends up, kind of screwing himself out of contention early? I think that's possible. It's easy to be even keeled and, not thinking negative thoughts when you're playing the best golf of anybody in the world. But when you're not, maybe he returns back to his old habits. So I guess two guys that I had notes down and as to why they were no goes for me. And obviously that's how it played out for both of us.
Yeah, the other one that I wanted to take because historically he has done well at Augusta, but his game is just garbage right now, and that's live golfer Cam Smith. Cam Smith has been playing terrible since he made the jump over to live after he won the Open Championship last year. So I couldn't roll with him. This is a tournament that I think I took him last year. I like him at this one. He usually shoots very well, but his game right now is just garbage. So I didn't feel comfortable pulling the trigger with him either. Well, that'll wrap up this episode. Just to recap, so Gel, we've got Scotty Scheffler versus Rory McIlroy. Gel's got Dustin Johnson. I've got versus Brooks Koepka. Gel's got Xander Schauffele. I've got Max Homa. Gel, Jason Day versus Colin Morikawa, and Corey Connors versus Tony Finau. So we'll be back next week to recap those after the Masters. And we will be back with you tomorrow, finish up the NFC side of the team needs for the draft coming up, and a little MLB action for you too. Weekly recap, some of our takeaways from the opening week of the season can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. Go to YouTube, Dead Arm Sports, into that search bar, subscribe, click the bell. That way you know when our live episodes drop. We monitor that chat. You can ask us any questions there. Otherwise, if you miss out on asking us questions, miss out on that live feed, hit us up at Dead Arm Sports, at DasGel, at DasJPet. Give us a follow there. Subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot, and we will swag you up. What are those?
And love you forever. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Pods. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review there. As well as Josh mentioned, on YouTube, just search Dead Arm Sports, subscribe there, and leave any comments. We're live at least once a week. So, chat box is always open. We're always listening, always watching that feed for some feedback there, and commenting on any videos. We're monitoring that as well. So any additional feedback is greatly appreciated, and we'll continue to deliver for you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, enjoy the opening round of the Masters. Again, we'll be back with you tomorrow to end the work week. And Joe, close her out.
Ping. That's the sound of the tee or the drivers.
Thank you.